welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Tammy. I am a researcher, writer, and reluctant academic. On my channel I talk about my PhD journey, living life as a Black woman, and other such things. Thank you for clicking on this video. Today I have been feeling very inspired by watching other booktube channels, primarily Hannah May's, Nikel Nooks, and Dolapo Adedokun's channels, and I have just been really totally enjoying watching their videos and hearing their thoughts, and I felt like I also wanted to get involved, particularly because effectively my job is to read and to write and to think, so I thought that I could dip my toe in a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to be doing the booktube newbie tag today in this video. I have the list of questions down below, and I'm not going to answer all of them because not all of them are super accurate, because I already have the channel and I haven't just like created a new channel for booktube. So I'm just going to start, and the first question is, what are some, I will answer this question. So why did you start the channel? So I wouldn't say that I started this like booktube channel, but I started my entire channel because 3 years ago now, I guess, I was starting to think about doing a PhD, and when I was looking about PhD vlogs and what it was like to do a PhD, particularly as a middle-aged, a mid-30s woman, particularly as a Black woman not in the sciences, I couldn't find anything. And I think it's really important to have an idea of what something looks like before you jump in and do it, particularly something that would be such a drastic change, such a massive pay cut that I was doing. So that's initially why I started my channel. Why I've started to do booktube content is basically because I saw other Black people, other Black British women, more of that booktube content in my algorithm, and I was like, oh, we out here. I also want to be involved. So really that's why it is. It's not peer pressure, it's that following. It's a little bit of following, but whatever, we're here. So the second question is, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to booktube? I'm not sure if these things are fun or unique, but I am an academic, and I have a very specific Black feminist analysis that I bring to my academic work, my academic writing, and also to my writing on my Substack. So I would say that the perspective that I bring is one that is very much shaped by that ideological perspective. Not sure if that's fun or unique, but I think that's one. I think another one is that I'm a Black British woman, and I don't see a lot of other Black British women booktubes. I do see a lot of African American women booktubes, which is great. Also, you might be thinking, Black British where? Because of my accent, I grew up in Canada, but I was born in London, and so I'm like kind of like a third country or third culture kid. So I think that also shapes like what I consume and what I think and how I see the world. And then I guess another thing perhaps is that I'm a writer. I have been trained throughout academia, but I also write poetry, and I have also been commissioned to write some things. And I do think that when you read as a writer, it is different, or like it brings different things. I was talking to my friend who's also a PhD, and I think, you have the skill of like close reading. And so yeah, like I think that's another thing that could be unique or interesting to this channel. What am I most excited for about this new channel? I think I'm most excited about potentially being able to kill two birds with one stone. And what I mean by that is that I read a lot for my PhD, and so I'm hoping that I can maybe take the reading that I'm already doing, and then this channel, or like doing booktube content, will encourage me to do like reviews on the books that I'm reading that are around relationality, relationships, friendships, and social media, because that will help me sort of like encode what I'm learning further into my brain, and then hopefully that will be interesting for other people who are interested in, let's say, broader discussions about how the internet interacts with society. And the other thing I'm excited about is to talk about books. I don't really have anyone in my life to talk about books with. So it's always nice to hear other people's opinions of books. Like, for example, I know that everyone was reading Yellowface. I don't really know many people that have read Yellowface, and I've read Yellowface, and so it's really nice to be able to like discuss, because I think a lot of people like that book. And I know some people found that the main character really chaotic, but I really didn't like the main character. And I love the book in all, but like, yeah, just basically I'm interested in being able to talk about books with people. And the next question is, why do I love reading? I really like reading. I'm not going to say that I love it, because I dip in and out of reading. I would say right now in my life, I'm in a pretty like consistent reading phase, because I'm trying to spend time off social media. I think I love reading though in general, because it feels like stepping into a different universe, a different world, particularly fiction books. You can just like open the book or reopen your Kindle, and then for really excellent writers that are able to sort of like capture the mise-en-scene and sort of like the characters' feelings and the setting really well, I feel like I just get completely swept away into a different world, which is really great because our current world is incredibly ghetto, and I look for any opportunity to have some sort of reprieve from the current status quo of what's going on. So I love reading for that. I also really enjoy reading because it's incredibly it's educational, but it's also informative. And I feel like I learn a lot, not only about like the subject matter that I'm actually reading, but particularly like in different situations that I might not have myself in. I learn what I think about those situations, and it makes me question how I'd respond to similar actions or whatever. So I like that it feels like it stretches my mind and introduces me to new ideas or perspectives in ways that I wouldn't have before. I have to say though that doesn't mean that I'm often reading outside of my own particular perspectives. So like growing up, I read a lot of books that I would say were incredibly white in the canon, and I never really read anything about like Black women's lives, Black queer women, Black older women, Black women outside of the States or the UK. So I really like sort of look for literature that does allow me to have that experience. But like, I'm not gonna be reading books or like nonfiction books that are about like a white Republican man, because I truly just don't care. The next question is, what book series got you reading? And I think I started reading a lot of books when I was quite young, particularly because I grew up in a Nigerian household with a Nigerian mother, and that really means that like you'd be reading because you really have 3 options for your career. And so like education and being smart was very much like important in my family, like as I was growing up. So I definitely read a lot. The books I remember, it's like Harry Potter when I was like a preteen, 11, 12, 13. Before that, I think it would have been like the Babysitter's Club. Before that would have been Judy Blume and the Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging books. So yeah, a lot of like YA about like girlhood, I think is what got me into reading. I remember when I was a bit older, I think after Harry Potter, it was like the, what is it called? Like the Hunger Games trilogy. I think that like fantasy type book, dystopian alternative, was very exciting for me. It was like nothing I had never really read before. And then when I was at university, I did my undergrad in English literature and language, and I read a lot more contemporary American literature. So I was introduced to the likes of Octavia E. Butler, Toni Morrison, and I found that sort of, you know, those very heavily political, socio-political stories about Black women's lives in the US just utterly so compelling, and really I think was like the early shaping of my Black feminist perspective, even though I remember at university I didn't call myself a feminist. I was young and I was trying to fit in. So yeah, I think those were the book series that got me into reading. So what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? For Nikel's Nook, I watch her book. She's another Black British booktube person. I don't have a question about her books. I just want to know how her hair is so luscious and gorgeous. And I think that that is just probably genetics. So jealous and envious for me. I think in general though, like being more serious, questions I'd like to ask is really just about the speed. Like I don't follow a lot of booktubers. I know it's like heavy on TikTok and it's huge on TikTok, but it's like very homogenous. It's very white, younger woman, generally what it seems like to be like middle class-esque. And so I don't know. So I'm very cognizant, I think, of the ways that like the booktube community is racialized and class and how that just like relates to the rest of content creation and like what you see in your algorithm. So why I say that is because like I haven't had a lot of exposure to booktubers that I think I find really compelling and interesting. But the question that I do have in general is like these people who are like, I read 200 books this year, or I read 30 books in the last week. How? How did you read so many books? Do you not have a job? And if you don't have a job, that's great. But like, could you say it's because you don't have a job? And so all you do is read? Because not that it makes me feel bad, but I just like have a wonder. I'm just like, how are y'all reading? How are y'all reading so much? Can I get some tips? Can I get some hints? Like, there was this whole post on Twitter a few weeks ago about this one babe who was like on the 1st of January. She was like, finished my first book of the year. And like people lost their mind because they're like, oh my God, how? Like she's not really reading. And it's fine to read a book in a day. Like, especially if you're someone like me who reads like 300 pages and above or like a little bit less. Like I'm not really a big chunky book girl. But so it's not like stuff like that, but it is really just like the vast amount that I see, particularly on BookTube, where it's like I read X insert ridiculous number of books in X insert ridiculously small amount of time. That has me like, how y'all do that, you know? I'm gonna skip the next two questions, and the next question I'm going to answer is, where do you read? I primarily read in bed. Before I go to bed, I'm trying to introduce reading, like habit stacking in the morning before I start my day. Over the like holiday period that's just happened, I have just been reading during the day while I've been off. And I also tend to read on my commute as well. I have a little bit of a commute right now during my fellowship. I'm not currently at home. Usually I'm in Liverpool. Right now I'm in Germany. I will link a video in the ether if you're interested as to why I'm here. So yeah, typically I read, at home, in bed. Sometimes I try and read during breakfast, on the commute. I really love reading during my commute. It feels like the most productive moment ever, just sort of like getting to work or getting wherever and also reading. It makes me feel really smug. I wonder if anyone else feels that way. Yeah, that's generally where I read. I've also started listening to audiobooks at the gym, which is super clutch. Right now I'm listening to Gabrielle Union's second memoir or autobiography, which is like We're Gonna Need More Wine or something. I've been putting that on at the gym, and that's been really nice actually. And the second book, or the second last question is, what kind of books do you like to read? And I came sort of prepared for this question because the kind of books I like to read are kind of split in terms of like academic and non-academic work. So I'm a researcher. I research Black women's digital lives. So right now, the books that I brought with me to my fellowship, I wonder if you can see those. If not, I'll include them here. These books are around like Black diaspora, around sociological ideas or literature on friendship, around decolonial feminism, and then another really great book called The Digital Lives of Black Women in Britain. And so those are the kind of books I like to read. My work is very interdisciplinary. It pulls from sociology, from media and communications, critical race studies, and it pulls from all those different disciplines and different types of literature. So I like academic books that do have more of a transdisciplinary or an interdisciplinary focus. In terms of like fiction or just pleasure reading, I do tend to read a lot of nonfiction women's feminist memoir. So Hannah May, for example, I would say like I have very similar book tastes as hers. So like a lot of contemporary fiction, a lot of literary fiction. The last book I just read is The Electricity of Every Living Thing by Catherine May. This was okay, but I really more preferred her book Wintering, which is a book about a woman finding her way back to herself in the winter and what it means to pause and to rest and to sort of like refuse to continue to sort of exist or operate as normal in society. And then another book that I was also influenced by Hannah May is How Kyoto Breaks Your Heart, which is, again, I think a collection of essays, sort of a memoir. My favorite book this year, or last year in 2023, is the book Arrangements on Blue, Notes on Living a Life. That is just such a gorgeous memoir about what it means to be a single woman in your 30s, what it means to live in a fatter body, and the ways that those things can influence what your life looks like. So I read a lot of memoir. I read a lot to educate and to expand my ideological perspectives on my worldviews, whereas I would say when I was younger, I feel like I read a lot more for escape and like to go on like a romp. It's not that I don't like books that are a romp, but I feel like I'm drawn more to books that teach me something, maybe that I'm curious about myself, or maybe that I want to learn more about myself. And if it also happens to be really escapism, thinking like magical realism here, then that is also super clutch. And then the last question is, what does your book collection look like? I'll insert a photo here of my current book collection, or part of my book collection. It's mainly academic books, and then a bunch of books that I have like collected over the years. I tend to read a lot more on my Kindle now, just for efficiency reasons. So I don't really have that many physical books, and I don't have as many books. And I've also given away and sold and gifted a lot of books that I had, you know, from my early 20s. That was the last question. I feel a bit awkward, I guess, sharing some of my reading habits and thoughts. But yeah, that's my booktube newbie tag. Please leave a comment, especially if you have any recommendations about memoirs or literary fiction, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!